That's loud. What's going on, dudes and dudettes? Major Pineapple here. And today, anyone who knows me knows that
I love Spider-Man.
ever since I was a little kid, Spider-Man has been my favorite character of all time. I've seen every movie on opening day, I've played all of the major games, have tons of Spidey comics. I even took off work when the PS4 game released and bought the limited edition Spider-Man PS4 Pro, and words cannot describe the emotions I felt seeing Spider-Man die in Infinity War and come back in Endgame. Spider-Man is a character that means a ton to me. Somehow all of the movies have released around pivotal moments in my life that have been guiding lights for me. Back when Homecoming was released, I was struggling with my weight, and the scene where he pushes those broken pieces of the warehouse off of him inspired me to push forward whenever I wanted to quit. When I was a little kid, I lived right near Hollywood, and my family and I went to see the original Spider-Man 2 on opening day, and I dressed up in the costume and all to watch the movie. Yeah, I bet a bunch of other kids did it too, but I did it the best, damn it. And I swear, some Sony exec was at that premiere I went to, saw me, and included Jorge into the Amazing Spider-Man 2 because of it. I love all the movies with every fiber in my being. Yeah, I may think the Sam Raimi movies haven't aged too well in certain areas, but they did what no other comic book movie was doing or has done in many respects. The Amazing Spider-Man might have lackluster stories, but the action sequences, character beats, and music all stand out and ooze that Spider-Man feel. And while many may despise the MCU iteration of Spidey, it's done more for the character in 3 movies than Sony did in 5 that came before. And Spider-Verse is just outstanding. But here we talk about video games, and Spider-Man is no stranger to the medium. Spider-Man 2's movie tie-in game is widely considered to be the quintessential Spider-Man experience. While I do not like this game, I definitely see why others think so. The first Spider-Man movie game had a swinging that was more akin to flying, but with style. The web's attached to nothing, but Spider-Man acts like he's struggling. Midway through development, one of the designers, Jamie Fristrom, thought it would be way more interesting to make Spidey act like a pendulum. Unfortunately, it was way too late in development to make this change, so it was added into the movie tie-in classic that most of us like. I'm sorry, I really wish I liked this game. I really did. I tried it out a couple years ago. I just could not get into it, but I do see why other people do like this game. But if it's worth anything, I adore the Ultimate Spider-Man game. Spider-Man 2 though started this trend, and even being the first one to do the realistic web swinging in a completely open world, it excelled in at the time and immediately set the standard. So much so that when there is a Spider-Man game without the physics-based web swinging, it's already dismissed. That's why the first 2 Beanox games never got the kind of attention that they deserved, unfortunately. Shattered Dimensions and Edge of Time are golden Spider-Man titles, and I will die on the hill that Edge of Time tells one of the best modern Spider-Man stories. While the amount of Spider-Men is cut in half from its predecessor, they actually interact with each other, and the thing that one Spider-Man does affects the other Spider in real time. This was awesome. I played this on my 3DS and sunk hours into it. Then, the next summer in 2012, the Amazing Spider-Man game came out alongside the movie on the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PC, Nintendo Wii, and 3DS on launch, and then was ported to the PlayStation Vita horribly, and the Wii U with all the DLC, making the Wii U version the definitive version to play. What? This was the first open-world Spider-Man game that we had gotten since Web of Shadows back in 2008. The newest tie-in game had Spidey insanely close to the camera to make you actually feel like Spider-Man, and I really like this change. I know others don't like it, but I think it's so cool. I don't prefer it having some distance between Spider-Man and the camera, it's just different. Like, I love garlic parmesan wings and Hawaiian barbecue equally, but for different reasons. Who else compares Spider-Man to chicken wings? But the one thing that people did not like about the first Amazing Spider-Man game was that the webs are connected to invisible points instead of actual buildings, and that enemies like Rhino and Scorpion are just cross-species monsters instead of actual characters. I think it fits a story well, and I do see why other people hate it if they do. Remember, garlic parmesan and honey barbecue. Love them both for different reasons. These new movie tie-in games don't exactly retell the story of the movie like most movie tie-in games do, but instead they're side stories in an adjacent universe. It's really weird because the first game takes place directly after the movie, but the second retells the movie in honestly a really horrible way. It's kind of like a Frankenstein's monster with how they do the story here. But Mark Webb kind of killed Electro essentially, so what else could they really do about that? I feel like they could have made it work. It's a superhero movie license game. They could have figured something out. When the first Amazing Spider-Man 2 game was released, I absolutely loved it. Hell, I remember vividly begging my parents to let me skip school to get this game, them allowing me, and having my grandpa take me to GameStop to pick it up, and us getting Taco Bell after to get breakfast. I'll bet I'm the only person that's done this. I even beat the game within one sitting. I don't know why I say that like I'm bragging, but I did that, and it's also one of the only games I completed 100%. I just realized I always 100% complete Spider-Man games. 7 years later though, my nostalgia goggles are off and I can actually think critically now. I got that skill last week. I hate saying this because I remember absolutely loving the Amazing Spider-Man 2 video game, but Jesus, this game is a mess. I wanted to take a look at it to coincide with the release of Venom Let There Be Carnage, but damn it. Oh, and spoiler alerts ahead for a 7-year-old mediocre game. The presentation and story is all over the place. Side missions are tedious and repetitive, and while controls and gameplay are just decent, I would coin that to more being used to the Insomniac Spider-Man games, which perfected it. Even though this was the first Spider-Man game to release on what was at the time the new next-gen consoles, this looks like it'd be barely decent looking in the early 7th gen. Spider-Man's main suit looks great, and some of the lighting and reflections, especially in the indoor levels, look amazing. I also especially like how the eyes are always white no matter what the lighting situation is, but everything else is so off. These graphics are less than subpar and are on alpha beta stages at best. It also doesn't help that the way the characters move and the way their lips move when they speak is like Ride to Hell Retribution bad, and the voice acting is even worse. Everyone, and especially Sam Riegel as Spider-Man, is so flat with their delivery and doesn't convey any emotion at all. It feels like they just spent a few hours in a booth and didn't even try to redo any takes. It also doesn't help that Spider-Man is just awful to listen to. He repeats the same lines over and over again, and the lines are always so long. His quips are supposed to be quick and funny, not dragged on and bland. The only one with any solid voice acting and lip syncing is Black Cat, and she's in the game for like 2 scenes. While the graphics may be shoddy, can the art style make up for it? Well, yeah, no. I'm not going to say anything about the designs that are from the movie like Green Goblin, Electro, or the Oscorp building because I actually really like them. This Green Goblin I find a lot more threatening than this Green Goblin.
Why is there an angry mob outside with torches and pitchforks?
I like this Electro design a lot too.
Why is there an angry mob outside with torches and pitchforks?
And I also think that this Oscorp building design is great.
Lovely weather we're having.
But the designs meant for the game itself are just uninspiring. Black Cat offers nothing new or original like the Insomniac version. Kingpin looks like he got splashed in the face with boiling hot water, and they literally just tweaked a bunch of things from the Carnage design and Shadow Dimensions and put it here. While I could go on for hours about Carnage's inclusion here, I'm going to be talking about that in a couple minutes, don't worry. A lot of the character models are just poorly done, except for Kraven. I think Kraven is so well designed and written even better. Kraven trained Spider-Man to become the ultimate hunter to make him a worthy opponent, and after 2 scenes with them together, Kraven thinks Spider-Man's ready to battle, and if I were Spidey, I'd be hunting for a less ugly place to live. New York City looks disgusting here. I hear it's pretty disgusting in real life too, but who needs real life when you have video games? It has this ugly cloudy look, and I love cloudy weather. You can mark it to maybe, ooh, Electro is causing a storm, but no, it's just like that. I get that this is used to make the draw distance less embarrassing, but this just makes it worse. Like, this is an 8th gen game, and the previous game on the 7th gen has a more impressive draw distance than this? Really? And the camera here is as much a fight as the combat. I'm not talking about when you're casually swinging, I mean when you bump into a building and you lose Spider-Man for a second. That's a common thing. Sometimes Spider-Man is just out of the shot when you're playing, when you're performing a finisher, when you're healing up, or whenever it just feels like it. Ugh, I can only talk about these bad visuals for so long, so let's talk about the music. The music here is actually pretty good, nothing special. It's very inspired though by Hans Zimmer's score, which is actually the first album I ever bought. And that's the most embarrassing confession in the video. The sound effects are pretty solid too when they actually play. The voice acting is really poor, except for Steve Blum, because let's be real, Steve Blum is a gift from the voice acting gods, and we cannot allow anything bad to happen to this king. One thing I noticed now that I didn't notice back in 2014 were the glitches. It's still few and far between, honestly, maybe only running into 5 at most, but it's still noticeable and more funny than anything. Whoa, Harry, what's up with your drink? But that was a big complaint back in 2014. Everyone's saying it was a buggy mess. I'm playing on the PS4, so it might be an issue on other consoles, but like I said earlier, I only had like 4 to 5, and they were just minor visual funny glitches. Nothing really game breaking. There's also a ton of loading screens here after every interaction, it feels like, and it completely breaks the flow of gameplay. Like, this is an 8th gen game and there's this many load screens. Characters talk, load screen. Finish a segment that took me a minute, boom, load screen. How is it this poorly developed? One of the big things that the Amazing Spider-Man 2 game advertised heavily was that you could play as Peter Parker and flex your journalistic muscles. And it's not that good here. They marketed the fact that you have a choice in dialogue, and it's not well done here except for a few select scenes, and it's mainly because those scenes you're actually interviewing someone, so it feels like you're just asking question prompts. The worst part is that it has literally no impact on the overall story. They could have just made this a cohesive cutscene, but that would have just taken a little too much effort, huh? Even though many of the character interactions are awkward, everyone feels like they're meeting each other for the first time. Even Peter's interactions with Aunt May and Harry, his surrogate mother, and his best friend, and there's barely any chemistry here. I mean, it's hard to convey it with character models and animations like this. Even though the story is a retelling of the movie with Beanox's own story mixed in, it doesn't really spoil the movie, thankfully. But with the absence of Gwen Stacy, my worst fear had come true. The only things in common with the movie is Max Dillon becoming Electro and Harry Osborn becoming the Green Goblin. That's it, and you could tell that they're relying on the player watching the movie beforehand, because the only times we ever see Electro is when you save Max Dillon and when you fight him in the city. That's it. You don't see him become obsessive over Spider-Man, you don't see him become Electro, you don't see the test experiments, none of that. Beanox dives a lot deeper into the relationship between Peter and Harry, giving that a lot more screen time, but it's not done well. The story that Beanox was really into telling was Wilson Fisk partnering with Oscorp to create a task force to up his stock and become the kingpin of crime, Kraven the Hunter training Spider-Man to become the Ultimate Hunter and becoming his greatest adversary, and Cletus Cassidy becoming the Carnage Killer. This specific story with Cletus Cassidy actually pulls at that loose thread from the first Amazing Spider-Man movie with Peter finding Uncle Ben's killer. I remember even watching that movie so confused why they didn't solve that, and was so excited to have Beanox finish this story. This part of the plot shows the dark side of Spider-Man, with his anger really showing. And while Spider-Man to me is a bright character in a dark world, I really enjoy seeing a serious Spider-Man. You find out that the killer is a man named Dennis Carradine, but the thing is, you don't get any closure because when you're finally face to face with him, he dies like 2 minutes later with only a CK written in blood next to him. Come on! This was anticipated for a while, and you made it seem like it was going to be the most pivotal point of the game, and you finish it with this? Why did you even do it at all? It intertwines with Kraven and Carnage when it didn't need to. This could have been the moment from Spider-Man 1. While it wouldn't be anywhere near as good, it still could have had some real emotional weight. Maybe Spider-Man is about to break his no-killing rule, but then realizes that's not who he is. Instead, you have Cletus Cassidy basically become Sin Eater rather than Carnage, and have him ramble with Spider-Man about the psychological and philosophical ideals of death. While this could have been great, it's just not done well, and it's done one too many times for my personal taste. The best part of this story, hands down, is the Kraven plot. Kraven acts like a mentor to Spider-Man, the way that Ra's al Ghul acts to Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins. Kraven is easily the best character here. The scenes he shares with Peter Parker and Spider-Man absolutely steal the show. They're done slow and methodically, and you could tell this is what Beanox really wanted to explore. There were so many story plots in this game, and not enough time to truly flesh any one of them out. Hey, just like the movie! I would have been more than fine if they just focused on Kraven and Dennis Carradine and completely cut out Kingpin and Carnage. And even the Green Goblin and Electro, they don't belong here. If they had to have them in here, maybe it could have just been the ending of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 as the beginning of the game, having Spider-Man deal with Gwen's death, go down a dark path, and start becoming more ruthless, and then have Kraven turning him into a better hunter, and end with Spider-Man facing Carradine, not killing him, and end with how Uncle Ben is the best or whatever. Boom. I just fixed the entire story in like a minute. Thank me later, Beanox. Well, if the main story isn't that good, at least there's fun side missions. Yeah, and GameStop gives you fair trade-ins. There are side missions, but they're just random crimes or dumb photo ops where you take a picture of a laptop. Who thought this was a good idea? There isn't even any story DLC. The only DLC here is just 4 extra suits. And to top it all off, these missions are also broken up by these stupid loading screens. These are at least somewhat entertaining because if you finish successfully, Whitney Chang says how great a hero you are. If you fail, J. Jonah Jameson goes off and calls you a menace. While the story is completely scattered all over the place, at least they truly nailed the web swinging. Kinda. Beanox made sure to acknowledge their sins and made it a point that the webs actually stick to buildings when you're web swinging instead of just invisible points in the air. What made me even more excited was having the triggers be the web shooters. R2 is the right web swing, and L2 is the left web swing. Hold one and then the other and you get a boost. In your face, Spider-Man 2! This is so good, and this actually made me feel immersed, as if I were the one swinging through New York City. See, that's what I thought back in 2014. I still though think that the trigger swinging is really good, but nowhere near as good as I thought it was. The web swinging feels nowhere near as fast as it should though. When you're swinging, it feels like you're launched so high up and it takes forever to get back into the swing of things. Insomniac definitely nailed it here in 2018, and there's no competition. I thought at least the web rush mechanic would work. The web rush is where the camera goes into a first-person view and gives you all these cool animations to get you to wherever you want to go. But here it's just a clunky and less cool web zip. I am so heartbroken over this. I loved this part of the first Amazing Spider-Man game. No matter what, going from point A to point B with the web rush always looked and felt so cool, and now it's just this. It was also used in combat to interact with your surroundings and wound enemies, but that's barely in the game too. You can stealth takedown, which is awesome. Don't even get me started. I'm so happy that this is still intact. But most of the gameplay, except for the web swinging, just feels better in the first Amazing Spider-Man game. Combat is so heavy and loose here, and it doesn't hit anywhere near as well as it does in the first game. They thankfully grace us with the almighty Stan Lee and his comic store, Comic Stand. I see what you did there. You can check out all kinds of concept art, character models, and even read comics from pages you collect across the city. And again, I gotta say this, there were definitely way more comics in the first compared to here. I hate comparing, but like, come on, man. I will say though, they have more costumes and arguably better costumes here. They got the Superior Spider-Man and Spider-Carnage. This is the only time these two suits have been in a mainline Spidey game, and I am all for this. I did have trouble controlling the game at times, but I'm gonna coin that to just being used to Insomniac Spider-Man controls way more, like I said earlier. I feel like a bunch of the problems that I have with this game are due to not having enough development time or budget, and when you take that into consideration, it makes a lot more sense. I wish I could find out more about the budgets or the development cycle of this game, because it is crystal clear that the Amazing Spider-Man 1 had a lot more attention put onto it rather than the second. You could tell there's love put into this project, but just not enough time. They have all these homages to the source material, but it feels like too much. Instead of creating their own mark on Spider-Man, they're relying heavily on nostalgia and what we already know. It's kind of a shame that the series got ended because while it is just kind of okay, I feel like they could have had an even better threequel with the end credit scene revealing the Chameleon. Even though the Amazing Spider-Man 2 game is mediocre, I still have fond memories looking back on it and my life around the release of this game. There's problems with the Amazing Spider-Man 2, but the one I didn't get to talk about is the box art. I saw this upside down at way too many stores, and those arms are reversed, and the red lining should be the other way. Worst game 2021! And that's the Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's not bad, but it's definitely not good. I would talk about how the combo number is so generic, and how every single enemy has the same character model, but I feel like that's kind of cheating. Anyway, dudes and dudettes, I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to click that like and subscribe button, and let me know down in the comment section below, what's your favorite movie tie-in game? Spider-Man 2, Captain America the First Avenger, I'll even include the Lego Marvel Avengers games. And also, real quick, while I have you here, there's some scheduling changes that's going to be happening once again. I know, I'm sorry, but I'm moving for the summer. It's just a summer. It's just a temporary thing. I'm picking up this job in summer. I'm moving away. Videos aren't going to be as consistent maybe, but however my videos will go, I'll put them out when they're ready instead of just holding on to them like I always do. Anyway, dudes and dudettes, new videos on Wednesday as of now, will be later changed. And always remember, you're never too old or too cool to play video games. Major Pineapple out.